This happened a few years ago when I was bartending in college. I was coming home down a stretch of divided highway at around 3 a.m. when I noticed a car heading towards me in the wrong lane. I doubted myself at first and thought the car was on the other side of the highway. But sure enough, the white Ford sedan passed me at a really high speed, at least 90. It's worth noting for later that I also drove a white Ford sedan. I was used to idiot drivers in the middle of the night, so I pulled to the side of the road and let him pass me. I had a moment of clarity and I thought to call the police, thinking that this person could hurt themselves or somebody else. The dispatcher answered, and after telling them which road and exit mile marker I was at, told me that they would send a car. The state police station was only a few exits away, so I figured they would send somebody and I would just drive home. As I headed back onto the highway, I noticed some lights a few miles behind me. I live in a more rural part of southeastern Pennsylvania, and traffic at 3 a.m. tends to be truckers and cops. The car gained on me as I was getting up to speed, so I stayed in the right lane and waited to be passed. Instead, they flipped on their high beams, making it uncomfortable to drive in. They rode my tailgate. At this point, I thought I was going to be pulled over by the police. I drove a white Ford sedan and had just called about a different white Ford sedan, so I grabbed my registration from my glove box. Suddenly, the car behind me audibly slammed on the brakes and stopped in the middle of the highway. They must have shut off their car because the lights went out, and I saw what looked like the same Ford sedan from earlier. Still, I thought that this may have been a police car. They did have a roof rack, and it could have looked like I had reached for a gun in my glove box or something. I panicked and I called 911 for the second time and asked the dispatcher if they had sent a cruiser to investigate. The dispatcher was a little curt with me and assured me that they had sent somebody out.
We have sent a trooper out to find the car, sir. I only asked because somebody's following me and acting weird. It could be a cop, but I think I freaked them out by getting my registration. Are you pulled over? No, they didn't turn on the lights. Let me try to get the trooper that we sent out.
As she was talking, the car again sped towards me and stopped inches from my bumper. Again, their high beams were on, and again, they slammed their brakes. I told the dispatcher,
I'm pretty sure this is not the police behind me.
The car sped to my bumper again and turned their high beams on, this time laying on the horn. Hearing this, the dispatcher asked me what was happening.
What's happening? Did you honk? That's the car behind me. I don't think it's a cop. I'll try to get the trooper again, but I don't think that that's him behind you.
For some reason, this is what shook me. Before that, I was thinking I would get pulled over and maybe get a ticket. Up until then, I was going the speed limit and trying to avoid getting pulled over. I told the dispatcher,
I don't care if I get pulled over. I'm speeding, and if they put their lights on, then I'll pull over.
I started to accelerate and the person behind me just kept up with me. The speed limit was 55 and they kept in my bumper the entire time, but this time they were swerving. I tried to signal for an exit, but then bailed on it, and they just followed me. At the next exit, I took the off-ramp and continued on to the on-ramp, and the car behind me followed the whole time. I thought about trying to go to a Wawa. It's a convenience store gas station. But the dispatcher and I thought that it would be unsafe. She was calm and talking to another person trying to send police to me. The other person, maybe a supervisor, asked if I could drive to the state police station. Realizing that I was only one exit away, I told her that I was coming there and she said that they would have troopers to meet me outside. As I pulled off to the exit, the car followed me. I blew a few red lights trying to get to the police station, and the car tried to pull into the other lane to pass me or pull up alongside me. Once the police station was in view, I put on my turn signal and the car slammed on its brakes again, turned off their lights, and turned into a parking lot. The story ends kind of anticlimactically as I pulled into the police station and met the troopers. The two of them went to find the car and I stayed with a third trooper. I thanked the dispatcher and her supervisor, and the state trooper escorted me home after taking a statement from me. I was never called to follow up or testify, so I can only assume the person didn't get caught. This happened years ago when I was about 17. I'm 30 now and I'm a dude for context. When I was a teenager, I lived in Marin County, a quiet suburb just north of San Francisco. However, most of my buddies lived in San Francisco, and most nights of the week, I could be found riding my bicycle back and forth across the Golden Gate Bridge. I enjoyed these long bicycle rides at night. I would often be as high as a kite. I'd put on my favorite playlist, passing by weirdos and street urchins, or admiring the desolate beauty of the bay. One of my favorite places to ride my bike was through the Presidio. The Presidio is the last neighborhood you pass in San Francisco before making your way onto the Golden Gate Bridge. It's famous for its old, beautiful military housing, an old airfield and hangars that have been converted into a seaside park, and the enormous eucalyptus trees and forests. At nighttime, it's dead quiet, and the only people you can see out are late-night Chinese fishermen on the pier down in the water, or people flying down the freeway into the city. Anyways, this one night I was coming back from hanging out with some friends, and riding my bike through the Presidio on my way home. I was leisurely gliding down the hills when I noticed a single older black car, something like an Oldsmobile coming up a road perpendicular to the one I was coming down. As it got closer, the black Oldsmobile took a left, blinding me for a moment with its lights as it passed. I didn't think much of it at the time. Here and there you might see a couple cruising to go make out by the bridge, or a car full of kids going to smoke a joint at the old pet cemetery beneath the highway overpass. A few minutes later, I had mostly climbed the hill that took you closer to the entrance of the bridge, and I looked down on Crissy Field. This road is dark with barely any lights, and I was enjoying looking down towards the water to my right when I heard a car coming from behind me. I looked behind me and saw the same old black Oldsmobile maybe 20 yards behind me with its lights off, strangely driving at a slow crawl. I tried to wave him past, but the car just kept on rolling slowly behind me. It was too dark to see who might be driving. The fact that the car had its lights off almost immediately struck me as a red flag, as well as its obvious slow trailing behind me. I gave it a few more yards and tried to whip it past again, but nothing. Spooked, I made a sharp left turn on my bicycle and began bombing down the hill in the opposite direction of the Oldsmobile. This route would take me back deeper into the more secluded wooded area by the cemetery and air hangars. For a moment, I felt relieved until I heard a screeching of car wheels and glanced behind me to see the black Oldsmobile lights still off, now passing behind trees coming down the same hill as me. The Oldsmobile had to have made an extremely unusual U-turn, especially considering how narrow the roads are in the Presidio. Terrified now, I began paddling faster away from the Oldsmobile. But as I picked up pace, so did the Oldsmobile, and it was quickly gaining my tail. Using all my strength, I pedaled as fast as I could up a small hill, and jumped off my bike, throwing it off the edge of the road to the left into some bushes, and quickly jumping off the road to hide. Hanging off the side of a hill, hidden in ivy, I was just below the road. I looked up but I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the black Oldsmobile pass. I waited and a few minutes later, I heard the car slowly approaching, no indication from headlights, and then pass by. And again, and again, and again. For nearly 20 minutes or so, I hid in the bushes as I heard the Oldsmobile pass back and forth overhead. Finally, I mustered the courage to get back on my bicycle and ride as fast as I possibly could ride back to the bridge. In the darkness, listening to myself pant, it felt like forever, but finally, I could see the glaring bright lights of the Golden Gate Bridge. But then, again I heard the car. I looked behind me to see the Oldsmobile again trailing me. I freaking smashed and made it to the parking lot to the bridge toll, rode up to the pedestrian sidewalk next to the toll, and got off my bike under the light and chain smoked for a while. I never saw the car pass under the bridge, nor did I see it again once I had made it to Marin. Okay, so a bit of backstory. This story involves me and my friend. We were both about 12 and 11, both female, and no offense to my friend or anyone else, but neither of us were very thin, and we got tired running across the field. And we're both alone at the park, and it wasn't far from my house, and our village is pretty small, where everyone knows everyone, so our parents weren't worried about us. And we're in England, so there's not as much fear of kids being alone. It's a big mistake. Me and my friend were both messing around on these swings and car watching, as there was a private road to some fancy houses, so some nice looking cars came down every now and then. I noticed this nice looking bright white BMW come down the road, and commented to my friend that it must be a pain in the butt to clean and keep it that way. About a minute later, the car drove back up the road. I noticed it and just wrote it off as them maybe picking something up and then leaving again. And then it came back down, slower. The driver drove up and down the road a total of about 5 times. At that point, we both looked at each other kind of scared and wondering, what the heck was this guy doing? We were told whenever we were in town to be careful of anyone you don't know approaching you, if we, our parents, aren't around. You know, that classic line you get bored of and just find annoying when it's repeated 24/7. We both decided that it was weird, and so she grabbed her phone and I grabbed her water bottle. I never kept my phone on me, and we started walking up the lane. The way that I get to my house was either across the road after you go up the path, walk up a drive a bit and through the back gate, or up the lane further, turn left and walk around and then go down our drive and through the front door. We got about halfway up the lane. There was a wall, so we couldn't just cut across. When the car came back, slower than ever, and then it stopped. When it stopped, I knew something wasn't okay, and I grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the field. To anyone else, it looked like we were running off to play on the hills at the back of the field. But we both knew that there is a path behind some trees that led to a bunch of storage units and houses where one of our other friends lived. About halfway across the field, we turned back to see the guy had gotten out of the car and was jumping the wall. We ran to the trees and through the secret exit. Right as we cleared the little alley, we heard it. A loud gunshot. This dude had a gun in England. No one here has guns, and this scared both of us. We were terrified as we had never been warned about guns, being told that they were much harder to get here, and we didn't have any problems with them. And that's true for the most part. We both ran again up the road, through these storage areas and out to our other friend's house. Neither of us breathed a freaking word about what we had experienced to anyone. Probably not a smart idea. But nothing ever happened. No crime, guns, or anything else. Everything went back to normal. I probably should have told my parents, but I was dumb and young, and I'm not going to tell them about 3 years later that a guy tried to shoot me and my friend. I wish the story ended there, but there was a little more. About a year later, me and some of my friends were shopping in the nearby town with her mom when I saw a familiar car. A bright and shiny white BMW parked on the road. It triggered my memories and I pointed it to my friend. She nervously laughed and we walked past it. But then I heard the little noise that goes off when the doors get unlocked by the keys, and see the light flash out of the corner of my eye. I turned around and I saw him. It was the same guy. He was with a woman who looked a little younger than him, and who was in stilettos and still shorter than him. And he was a tall guy. I whispered to my friend and she dragged me around the corner after our other friends were ranting to me, asking whether he had seen me, and if I thought that he had recognized us, and if I was sure that it was him. She seemed more freaked out than me, and I did something I wish I didn't. I lied to her. He had definitely noticed us, but whether he recognized me, I didn't know. I told her that I didn't get a great look at him, and that it had been a year and I wasn't entirely sure. I know that it was him, and it still creeps me out to think that by sheer crap luck we ran into him again. I don't want to know what would have happened if I didn't pull my friend to that back lane, and if we had gone across the road or to my house. As a teenager, I had quite severe mental health issues which landed me in a few psychiatric hospitals. Some patients had very overt symptoms of various disorders, whereas others, it was harder to tell exactly why they were there. One girl in particular, Jess, was someone that I really admired. She was older by a few years, 18 to my 15, and represented me the kind of cool, trendy, laid-back adolescent that I wish I could be. I really wanted to be friends with her, and was really happy when she took a liking to me. We started hanging out with each other every day on the ward, and still, after months, I had no idea what was wrong with her. One day, I just came out and asked her. I was worried that she would be mad, but she wasn't. She said that she was scared to tell me that she had been in a relationship with a female teacher, who was apparently married at the time to a man, and to save her reputation, the teacher claimed Jess had been harassing her. She said that they had been in love, and when she insisted this to be the case, she was removed from the school and placed in a hospital. In my 15-year-old brain, that didn't sound too far-fetched. I felt like I knew Jess well at this point, and she hadn't behaved in any atypical way around me. I also had a lot of resentment at being there myself, so it wasn't a great cognitive leap for me to believe the hospital staff, aka the adults, hadn't done thorough research, and had just assumed she was delusional. She told me that, although she was hurt and still had feelings for this person, she was slowly but surely getting over it. I apologized for asking, and we moved on. Eventually, we were discharged from the psychiatric hospital. Jess left a month or so before me, but we kept in contact. When I got out, we met up and she asked if I wanted to attend a concert with her. I hadn't heard of the band, but I figured if she liked it, it would be worth seeing. I asked for more information, so that I knew where I was going, but she just asked me to meet her at a nearby station that Saturday, and she would lead us from there. Again, I trusted her. We arrived at a huge stadium, which seemed to be holding some sort of event. I was confused, as the band were largely unknown and I had anticipated a dive bar or a small, independent venue. It was also really early for this much activity inside and out. Someone working with the event handed me a flyer which explained exactly what we had come to. It was a seminar conducted by a particular denomination of Christianity. Lots of shouting, lots of healing, etc. It seemed like something run by a modern-day Jim Jones. I was mad but also really confused. I asked Jess what was going on, and at first, she skirted around my questions. Eventually, she admitted that she believed her teacher would be attending this event, and she wanted to confront her about lying to the police and to the school. She insisted this was the last time she would be making any contact with her, and had decided it should be in the public, so that there would be people around to witness it. I'm not sure why she asked me to come along, and I didn't ask. However, I did ask why she believed the teacher would be at this event, and to which she revealed that she had driven past her house and found the flyer in her letterbox. I was completely shocked. I started to realize that maybe none of what Jess had said was true, regardless of how sure and persuasive she seemed, was grounded in any reality. I was also really nervous, as I didn't want to make her angry or defensive. So I explained that it wasn't my thing and I needed to leave. She decided to stay, with the intention of searching every row of chairs. It was impossible at the size of venue to find this one woman. Jess tried to reach out to me after that day, sending pictures, messages, and videos, but I ignored them. I was scared of her, of what she could be capable of doing, and worried this obsession she had for her teacher would somehow translate to me. Eventually, she gave up and we never communicated again, but I still wonder what she's doing.